I'm gonna show you the easiest way to change the oil on a B9 Audi S4. If you've paid attention to my Instagram or you saw my latest video, you would have seen that I just purchased this car. It's got 19,000 miles, it's a 2018 model, and it's ready for that 20,000 mile service, which includes an oil change. Now, you could go to the dealer, but a 20,000 mile service costs probably the better part of $800. So I'm making a little series of videos that shows you kind of all the harder stuff to do, and you can DIY it, and the parts cost is roughly in the $150 range. Now for the oil itself, you're looking at somewhere under $70. This is the specific oil that goes into this car. It is 508 standard, and it is 0W20, which is what's recommended for the S4. And this is one of the few, Castrol I believe makes this, one of the few oils that really has that standard built in. Now some people will say that there is a gas mileage related issue, and this is why they want you to use this, and heavier weight oils are just fine. That may be the case. I need to do a little more research. Now that oil can be a little hard to get. I got mine on ECS Tuning, and I'll add some links. And of course, you're gonna need a new filter. This is a cartridge style filter. It drops into a housing on top of the engine. Now the one caveat to doing a very easy oil change on the B9 S4 is this pump. It'll let you suck the oil right out of the dipstick tube just the way the dealer does it. Now, it is something that you'll have to invest in. There are cheaper models, there are more expensive models, and I will link to this one on Amazon. It's my personal favorite pump. I really like it. What I would say is it's a worthwhile investment because you don't have to actually pick the car up. You could do this right on the ground. People will argue that this is not the best method because they say a little bit of oil gets left behind, but this vehicle takes 7.7 quarts. Who cares if there's like 10 milliliters of oil at the bottom of the pan? It's getting diluted by some insane ratio. It doesn't matter. And of course, I always recommend gloves. You always see this in my videos. Definitely protect your hands. The oil is a carcinogen. It's bad for you. Now let's go get started. Now my car is on my lift. You don't have to actually lift this for this procedure. That's what's so cool about doing it the easy way with the pump. But I've got my hood open, and the first thing we want to do is pop this engine cover. And really guys, it just comes right up. It's just sitting on these clips. Now one thing that's important to point out is the B9 Audi, whether the A4 or the S4, this is the S4 obviously, it doesn't actually have a dipstick. It has an electronic system inside the car. Now, there is a dipstick that ECS Tuning sells. I wish I had it to show you like I did for my A4, but it's on back order. I think I'm only gonna get it maybe for New Year's. So for now, we're gonna use the electronic system. Now the dipstick tube is right here, and it's just got a little cover on it. It can be a bit of a pain to pull up, but I'm gonna just use these pliers to give it a gentle pull. Wasn't actually so gentle. Wow, it's got 2 O-rings on it, but that's where the dipstick would go if this had one. Set this aside unless you're replacing it with a dipstick. Pop this open. Doesn't look milky or anything, which is always a good sign. You can see I'm using the really thin tube, and what you want to do is feed this into the dipstick hole, not the fill hole, just the dipstick hole. And you want to kind of get it. There's going to be a little resistance, but you can get it down to the bottom. Now that you've got it on the bottom, it's important to know the operation of this pump. In this mode, the pump pushes out. In this mode, the pump pulls in. The correct type of oil would be slightly green tinted. Now, of course, it's been a few miles, so it's entirely possible the green tint's just not very visible. This wasn't an Audi dealer that I bought it from. They told me they did an oil change, but I have a feeling they didn't use the correct oil. After a few minutes, you should see kind of the last dregs of the oil come out. And you should see on the pump that we're somewhere above 7 liters. One thing I did is I put a slightly bigger hose here just to speed things up. I found one that just fit. And I'd say it took probably about 5 minutes for the pump to suck everything out. I had to repump maybe 2 or 3 times. What we need to do now is use this 32mm socket to take this housing off for our filter. But what we're gonna do is first loosen it a little. We just want the seal to break. There we go. Seal's definitely broken now. It's finger tight. What we don't want is all the oil to spill out. We want to pick some more of it up with our pump. So we're going to go back to our pump. Get it primed again. What we just don't want is all the oil to spill out that's in the filter here. We want it to go right into the pan. I think we're good. If you do it too fast, I know it doesn't look like much is coming out, but if you do it too fast, it just rushes over the sides and you've got to clean up your engine. Just make sure we get everything off the bottom there. Now what I'm going to do is pop off this smaller hose, take the bigger hose, reverse the action on our pump, and go ahead and empty that sucker right into my waste oil drum. And you never want to dump oil, you of course want to properly recycle it. Now, what you're going to do is very carefully take your rag, pull this up, and immediately throw it into the rag. And that's a quick little move you need to do so that you don't drip, and you don't want to drip all over your engine. We could see the cartridge that's in here. It's good to look, make sure there's not a bunch of metal flakes in it. I don't see anything like that. It looks very good to me. And then you just kind of yank on it till it comes off. And now that it's off, you could set this piece down and this will get thrown out. So you want to take your new filter, your new O-ring, you want to set them over here. Take your filter, take your housing cap, plug that bad boy in. You should hear a nice click. You want to, should probably best to do this first so you don't accidentally stab your filter, but you want to get the old O-ring off. You want to take some of the oil. You want to lubricate. My hand's already full of oil. You want to lubricate your new O-ring so it doesn't get stuck. And you kind of want to start working that new O-ring around because you're taking it all the way down to its perch. And then just kind of use your finger to run it around. Boom, we are set. It is nice and oiled and lubricated. You want to pop that back in. Start screwing that down until your finger tight. Now the cap says 25 Newton meters. My torque wrench does have Newton meters, so I could set it to 25. That's roughly 18.5 foot-pounds if your torque wrench doesn't have that option. So that's 25.1. Pop that bad boy in, and we see the 0W2508509 on the front. So this is the correct oil to use. And I'm told it is slightly green tinted. I've never really seen it. Oh yeah, I poured a little in the cap here. It is most definitely green tinted. I'm gonna take a little UV light and see what it looks like. Oh, and it glows blue, look at that. Well, let's dump in our first bottle. And you can definitely see that stuff is nice and green. I'm sure it turns brown over time. It's probably impossible to tell whether or not the last dealer really did do this correctly or not. Like I said, I've heard of real Audi, main dealers doing this wrong. Not a cheap oil change. This is a big boy, but it's got a, larger turbo, I think, than the A4. The A4 turbo looked about the size of my fist. I'm pretty sure this thing is larger. Looking at this engine, honestly, everything looks pretty serviceable. I was a little scared that the V6 might be a little tougher to work on. All right, let's get our 6th bottle in. And these are our last 2, so this one gets dumped in completely. It's time to do our last bottle, and interestingly, it is labeled in milliliters and ounces. 0.7 quarts is 662 milliliters, and there are 946 milliliters here. So we want to have 284 milliliters left over. So that's 300 at that little line right there. And we want to, I guess, just be a little below that. I would say that's 280 remaining. I think that's pretty fair. You could save the rest of this for either your next oil change. It might make the math hard, or just keep this for, topping off if you're burning any oil. Hopefully you're not, but some people do say theirs burns a little oil. I have not had it long enough to tell. My A4 did not burn any oil, so I'm hoping this S4 doesn't either. Everything should have drained out of this funnel by now. Let's close our cap. Now let's put this cover back on. I like to get the rear of the cover sort of mated up first. Once it's made it up, do the front. Now we got to get back in the car and we got to make sure the oil level is right. So we got to drive it around a little and we got to reset our oil life. If you've enjoyed the video thus far, I'd love it if you click the subscribe button. There's going to be more of these soon. Of course, a like or a nice comment goes a long way too. I love interacting with all you guys. It makes me feel like we have our own little community. All right, now we're back in the car after the oil change. And the first thing we want to do is turn the ignition on. So you don't press the brake pedal, you just push the button. Now that we've got the ignition on, we're going to be using this control to adjust the vehicle menu to reset the oil life. So first, you can scroll around by turning the wheel. I'm sure you're already familiar with it if you have this car, but pick the vehicle option, and in here, to find the right setting, you can just push this up. And when you push it up, it'll let you start searching. So here we're going to do the reset. So we're going to reset, and I guess the dealer had already reset it in my case. Now to check the oil level, we do want to start the car. And it says it's okay, but we really want to start the car, drive it for a couple of minutes, park it on something flat, and then look in the screen again. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was informational. And I'll catch you again real soon with more of this content. And the aftermath.